Good afternoon and welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. I trust you had a great weekend. We waited for these folks from the census and they never came. Macro Thoughts, this is a fabulous photograph by Getty Images. BIARRITZ, France, G7 leaders discuss global economics and trade. And very clever angle, isn't it? Hervé tweeted me, "I don't remember of a week when the world fed you with so many headlines to deal with, starting with the Fed as the enemy, to Carney's lèse-majesté, to Tariff's villégiateur in BIARRITZ." And indeed, Tariff's arrival in BIARRITZ came too late for my article, which was called China Strikes at Trump. I published it separately. In that, I started with David Inglis. It's Friday evening in Asia. It's the weekend. The timing of this news smack toward the open in America, tweeted David Inglis. The precise timing of the news was deliberate and designed to roil US markets. Touched on the level of Chinese retaliation, I said, was the message, and of the ilk of the shoe thrower in Iraq all those years ago. Spoke about the Renminbi, and we're currently at 7.15, 7.16, and I said it's being used as a shock absorber and a very precise first responder to Trump. I took a diversion into the book of Revelations. I am the Alpha and the Omega, says the Lord God, who is, who was, who is to come, the Almighty. Newly minted Defense Minister Esper told Fox that the testing of previously banned ground-launched intermediate-range missile and releasing the video of it meant to deter Chinese bad behavior. And I asked, is this a permanent rupture? Or is this a crazy off-the-charts escalation just before a deal? The markets pirouette on the answer to this question. And then earlier this morning, Trump says he's gotten 2 calls from China. They want to make a trade deal. We will start shortly to negotiate. This will make a deal, he tweeted. And that follows overnight Chinese comments in the same direction. The Chinese renminbi offshore hit the highest since the 26th of February 2008. And you've got to keep an eye on that. This is another great photograph of the G7 BIARRITZ party. You remember all those months ago, Trump said trade wars are good and easy to win. And it took me on Friday evening back to Apocalypse Now, the flight of the Valkyries, because I'd written the previous week that safe havens are priced for Armageddon now. 10-year JGB yields awfully close now to all-time lows. 10-year US Treasury yield sinks below 1.46%, close to an all-time low. If you're interested in listening to the ride of the Valkyries, please, there's a link on Rich Wrap-Ups. So as we see China planned retaliatory tariffs on $75 billion of US goods, Trump said existing 25% tariffs would rise to 30% on October the 1st, which is also the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. The timing and response of the announcement on Friday was very powerful, specifically because Trump is a little bit of a 21st century artiste, very highly attuned to the market. His tweets are positive in US market hours, designed to soothe, massage, and finesse US asset prices. and he turns more negative in Chinese trading hours. So very precisely calibrated response by the Chinese. And why I keep talking about the renminbi is because I think by controlling the price of the renminbi, the Chinese are essentially signaling they have control over the console. This is a weekly chart from simple trends of the renminbi. And as I've said previously, the Chinese have been very surgical in their response and targeting the farm economy in particular. Some of his administration literally couldn't speak in one of these farm states and was kind of had to be taken away. So 5% tariff on soybeans, 5% tariff on US crude oil imports. Trump, thank you for your attention to this matter. And that took me back to the specialist who's monitoring data on his mission console. And he says, we have a deviate tomahawk, we copy, there's a voice, we copy, we have gross oscillation here. And I said Xi Jinping to some extent has repelled the US advance, and the renminbi price action is the message that's been delivered with finesse and subtlety, and whose import cannot be ignored. In that same article, I was writing about the feedback loop phenomenon of the renminbi weakening, and then I learned that the environment too has a feedback loop phenomenon which can turn into a dieback. 27th of May, I wrote about how the Chinese-US war was turning ballistic. 9th of July last year, I asked Tariff wars, who blinks first? Home Thought's mist surrounds the ship, icebergs draw near, the crew falls silent and wait for it to clear. Let me see, say. It's worth it, hold on, said Sunrise to the girl. My name is Rose, she disclosed. I'm on top of the world. Rick Sanchez reported on these weird radio bursts from deep space, which have been intensifying. This is the radio burst emission from the magnetar XTE J1810197. It has recently undergone another radio and high energy outburst. This is only the second radio outburst that has been observed from this source. Take it back to the specialist who's monitoring data on his mission console. And I went back to super article in GQ when a 26-year-old American missionary set out for a lush island in the Indian Ocean last year. It was with one objective in mind, to convert the uncontacted Sentinelese tribe who had lived for centuries in isolation. After the storm finally passed, a crew of local Christians hid Chow on their 30-foot open wooden boat and struck out under darkness for the most extreme outcrop of the Andaman archipelago on a route presumably meant to resemble that of a normal fishing expedition. As they dodged other craft, Chow recorded the Milky Way was above, and God himself was shielding us from the Coast Guard and Navy patrols. It really is an extraordinary story. From his kayak, Chow yelled in English, "My name is John, I love you, and Jesus loves you. Jesus Christ gave me authority to come to you." Then offering a tuna most likely caught by the fishermen on the journey to the island, Chow declared, "Here are some fish." In response, the Sentinelese socketed bamboo arrows onto bark fiber bowstrings. Chow panicked, he flung the gift into the bay, and he paddled like I never have in my life back to his boat. You have to read it, it's a great article. Political reflections. The airstrike is the first Israeli airstrike in Iraq since jets destroyed a nuclear reactor being built by Saddam Hussein in 1981. But their range of activity has expanded tremendously. They've been Lebanon, there's an incident, Nasrallah spoke yesterday, Iraq, where they are saying they've identified Iranian assets, Syria. Maliki, who leads a Shia bloc in the Iraqi parliament, said yesterday that Israel was fighting a secret war in Iraq. If that policy continued, he said, Iraq would become a battle arena that drags in multiple countries, including Iran. Be sure that if the confrontations between us starts, it will only end with your removal from the region once and for all. Take you back to a piece I wrote in October 2013, Barack Obama and Hassan Rouhani, the two Husseins. And I said the Pax Americana in the Middle East is a three-legged stool, with the US the most important leg, then Israel the second most important, and Saudi Arabia. And in 2013, neither Riyadh nor Tel Aviv were aligned with President Obama's Iranian rapprochement. And Saudi Arabia in particular had become increasingly forthright and was threatening its own pivot and away from the US. And we're seeing that, reversion, as it were, under Trump. What drives migration today? The answer is neither war nor politics. More than anything, it is attitudes to immigration and to the resulting rapid ethnic transformation of large parts of the West that tally closest to support for populist causes. Smith adopts a geographical perspective, taking as his starting point the contrasting demographic conditions of Africa and Europe, the former home to ever larger cohorts of young people, the latter greying before our eyes. Little or nothing to do with the German response to the 2015 Syrian migrant crisis, or the fact that ONS data suggests since the late 1990s, the UK has had more immigration from beyond the British Isles in an average 2-year period than it experienced from the Norman conquest to VE Day. Take, for example, the UK and Nigeria. According to the UN in 1950, when still a British colony, the number of Nigerians aged under 10 was perhaps half as high as the United Kingdom's. Today, there are nearly 8 times as many under 10s in Nigeria versus the UK, despite the latter having been a land of mass immigration for the best part of 2 decades. The scramble for Europe is really about Africa, just as a book about the scramble for Africa of the 1880s would really be about Europe. Interesting point, I thought. As a result, population explosion in Africa has been supercharged compared with earlier adopters of modernity in Europe. If large numbers of people are a good thing, then this is a case of last mover advantage. In the end, at current fertility rates, Europeans are breeding themselves out of existence. Some, Spaniards, Italians, Bulgarians, Estonians, Germans, in the relatively short term. Others, Irish, British, French, Scandinavian, with a slightly longer term horizon. In response to the white supremacists chanting, "They shall not replace us," and indeed for predominantly white societies across Europe, nervous about the ethnic change they're witnessing, we need to ask, are you prepared to reproduce yourselves? Great way to put it. And this takes me back, he was speaking about the demographic surge in Africa. November 2014, I wrote a piece about Ouagadougou. And I said, what's clear is that a very young, very informed, and very connected African youth demographic, which many characterize as demographic dividend, but for beautiful Blaze turned into a demographic terminator, is set to alter the existing equilibrium between the rulers and the subjects, and the rebalancing, I said, has begun. The lights sparkling across the mountains surrounding Hong Kong are the human chain of protesters. The Hong Kong Way protest was a 28-mile human chain of protests last night. As I said on the 19th of August, it is not possible to Xinjiang, Hong Kong, I think. Hong Kong protests, latest tensions escalating, 12th week gunfire and water cannon used for first time. China sends warning on troop deployment. The Bank of England governor said, Mark Carney said, in a multipolar world you need a multipolar currency. Said the world's reliance on the US dollar as a reserve currency is too risky. Proposed a new digital currency to replace it. In a multipolar world, you need a multipolar currency, he said. New digital currency based on a global basket of goods would provide equilibrium to a system where some countries have moved to zero negative interest rates. The question is, how do you get there? You don't just jump to something new overnight. Look, threats by any nation to undermine the petrodollar system, which Mr. Carney seems to be suggesting, are viewed by Washington as tantamount to a declaration of war against the USA. Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein. In 21st century geopolitics, this is the granddaddy of all geopolitical red lines. President Trump and Prime Minister Boris Johnson catching up with each other in France. That's a photograph from Scavino 45. In Newsweek, it's economic narcissism, it's economic policy by whim, pride, ego and tantrum. Tony Fratto told the Post, this administration has not done itself a whole lot of favours in talking about the economy. I'd also quoted him previously when he was speaking about the Renminbi, about which he said we're in that bizarro world where you can be a currency manipulator if you fail to manipulate your currency. Think about that. Currency markets, euro dollar 1.1116, dollar index 97.879, Japanese yen 105.94, but that had gone below 104 in the early hours. Swiss franc 0.9744, the pound 122.38. The Australian dollar, which dipped below 0.67 this early morning, is at 0.6760. India rupee 72.185. South Korean won 1218.205. Brazilian real 412.21. Egyptian pound 16.545. And the South African rand 15.3338. Dollar index, this is a 5-day series chart, and I still think we're going a lot higher. What's been interesting, however, I will admit, is that the euro and Swiss franc, the euro, the Swiss franc and the yen are behaving in a much more similar fashion, and that's meaning the euro seems to still be in this infinity wage. Trades a little like the yen. I'm still bearish on the euro. I still think it resolves lower. Japanese yen went to below 105. This chart is from JS Block, we're at 105.94 right now. Commodity markets, this is interesting. Gold 1526. Every time you think it's about to go down, it needs buying support. But WST Pat Glenn says this is a triple peak in gold. Let's keep an eye on it. I'll be a seller here at 1526.41. Crude oil, $54.89. Obviously, it's those two macro gale forces I've spoken about before. Emerging markets, JP Morgan EMFX index trades at a record low of 60.27. As I said, on the 19th of August, emerging and frontier markets look in big trouble this time round. I've previously written that in the middle of the night is when gremlins and goblins stalk the FX markets. The Turkish lira plunged to a low of 16.1485 against the yen before paring most of that slide. That's gremlins and goblins for you. Sudan Prime Minister says the country needs $80 billion in aid for the next 2 years to cover its import bills and regain trust in its currency. And he says he needs $2 billion in foreign deposits to stop the pound from falling further. I've written about it severally. 29th of July, I called it the Oud Spring in Khartoum. 10th of June, I said the zeitgeist of the revolution in Khartoum was intoxicating as I watched events unfold. It felt like Sudan was a portal into a whole new normal. 10th of June, Hugh Masekela said, I want to be there when the people start to turn it around. Sudan is a Masekela pivot moment. The US Export-Import Bank said on Thursday its board intends to vote on a $5 billion direct loan for the development of an LNG project in Mozambique. Qatar plans to build a new port in the central Somalia town of Hobyo. This goes back to something I wrote in August last year about the Indian Ocean economy in a port race. The Gulf countries, I said, who now appear to see the Horn of Africa as their hinterland, are all jostling for optimal geo-economic positioning. Zambia's got an inverted yield curve too. No negative yields though. The 2024 local currency debt it sold was at 32%. Oh boy. Zimbabwe's finance minister has blacked out inflation figures, but a calculation shows that it is 230%, according to John Robertson. And as I wrote on the 29th of July, Zimbabwe is a laboratory experiment, and if it was a laboratory experiment with inflation at 176%, I dread to think, well, it's at 230%. That's why I said there is a straw in camel's back moment. This is Shamva Road in Zimbabwe by KPC Zim. 21st of January, I said what is clear to me is that Zimbabwe is at a tipping point moment and that there is a correlation between high inflation and revolutionary conditions. To wit, interviewer, what's the price of a loaf of bread? Minister of Finance, it is whatever it is. So, it is $6.50, okay? And October last year I was talking about the government's voodoo economics, where it spent $1.3 billion priming the economy ahead of the election. Money it did not have was the straw that broke the camel's back. South African all-share up 2.39% this year. Dollar versus Rand. The Rand is on the slide again. Egyptian pound, very firm even after that 150 basis points of rate cuts. EGX 30 up 10.01% year to date. Nigeria all-share down 11.55% year to date. Investors say no thanks to Ghana's debt offering yielding above 20%. Ghana sold 162.1 million cedis of 20-year bonds with a yield of 20.2%, well short of its target of raising 450 million cedis. The yield pickup is not sufficient to compensate for the risk, Mark Boland. And I wrote about this on the 19th of August. I said emerging and frontier markets look in big trouble this time around. Last time G7 economies went full on zombie, the liquidity surge washed up just about everywhere in every corner of the world. It was characterized as the global hunt for yield. Now when safe haven demand turns parabolic, investors are signaling they're not interested in the return, but only in getting their principal back. Ghana Stock Exchange is down 9.18% year to date. Standard Chartered reported first half earnings per share rose 5.486%. They trimmed their government of Kenya securities position by 15.6%. Grew loans and advances to customers by 7.442%. Total assets hardly budged. Profit before tax up 5.3%. Profit after tax up 5.335%. EPS up 5.486%. And they're paying a dividend of 5 shillings a share, which will go down well. First half performance is summarized in this tweet that I saw. Flame Tree Group reported first half earnings per share declined 77.273%. Revenue was down 0.847%. Selling and distribution costs up 13.711%. Profit before tax down 82.5%. Cash and cash equivalents improved 43.792%. Harold Banguera, the CEO, we have seen a very positive trend in the last 2 months, both in sales and margin. Traditionally, the second half of the year shows better performance than the first half, and we are still targeting to push for final net growth in sales and profit. Kenya shilling last at 103.20. Nairobi all share up 6.72% year to date. NSE 20 down 12.57% year to date. Tala has raised $110 million in the Series D financing round led by RPS Ventures. February 2018 Eurobond issue 10 and 30 year at 6.7 and 8%. The latest issue dual tranche Eurobond 7 and 12 years at 6.1 and 7.2%. Stock market trading at a P of 11.3 and a dividend yield of 5.3. Thank you for stopping by.